So let's talk about TRID. TRID is short for TILA-RESPA Integrated Disclosure Rule, which itself refers to TILA, the Truth in Lending Act. The major changes from the CFPB are now the norm for real estate closings, moving us away from the 3-page RESPA-compliant HUD format to a 5-page closing disclosure and a 3-page loan estimate. In addition to the loan estimates that the lender provides and the closing disclosure that can be provided by either the attorney or the lender, attorneys and title companies are being called on more and more to provide an Alta statement as well as the seller's disclosure. So what are the documents and changes? Well, the changes that have been mandated are the early truth in lending and good faith estimate consolidated into a single loan estimate form, the final truth in lending statement and the HUD-1 pulled together into a single closing disclosure form. Nowadays we're all calling it the CD. Attorneys are being called on to generate a seller's disclosure. Usually this is based on an existing closing disclosure, but you might have to generate that as well. And sometimes a title company or bank will also ask for an Alta settlement statement for a line-by-line breakdown of the closing. Most of the information that's on Alta is on the CD and vice versa. So let's take a look at the new forms. The loan estimate is created by the mortgage broker or lender, who is responsible for the accuracy of the document. This document is like a template for the disclosures. The first of the disclosures, the 5-page closing disclosure, will be the responsibility of either the settlement agent or the lender, and it's the lender's job to maintain accuracy. The seller disclosure will be the settlement agent's job to produce. Once again, responsibility falls to the lender to ensure there are no discrepancies. In some cases, you may also want to produce a custom buyer's disclosure that works from the borrower's side of the closing in much the same way as the seller's disclosure did. The Alta statement is a popular addition for title companies and anyone who wants fees itemized, separate from the closing disclosure. And most recently, closing protection letters were added, these are often abbreviated CPLs, to the EasySoft system, providing an additional service for settlement agents or title companies who need to generate these special letters efficiently while processing a closing. We're also adding e-jackets to our software. So that covers the basics. Let's get into some details, starting at the beginning of the closing, the loan estimate. EasySoft also includes a loan estimate module as part of the EasyCDF software. So if you're an active or trial user right now, you already have this and can take a look at what I'm talking about. The loan estimate is what replaces the old truth in lending disclosure and good faith estimate, and it's a single 3-page document containing a wealth of loan-related information, not just the loan terms and amount, but also projected payments, estimated interest rates, insurance and taxes, provisions for state law, breakdowns of loan costs, and an estimated cash to close, which will carry forward onto the CD. The Alta statement, which by the way is not a substitute for the HUD or CD, is an additional standardized form from the American Land Title Association for the title insurance industry. These standardized forms itemize fees and charges over a simple layout that allows you to quickly read off the sale price, loan amount, loan and title charges, adjustments and payoffs, recording and transfer charges, prorations, commissions, etc. The buyer's disclosure, it's a custom form in EasyCDF, fills in a gap in TRID rules that most law firms have now noticed, and it's become a pretty popular feature. Before we introduced this, firms were forced to provide borrowers with the full closing disclosure, all 5 pages, showing both the seller's information and the buyer's. But the seller would be shown a version which only contained their own information. The purpose the new buyer's disclosure serves is that it shows only the borrower's side of the closing. In it, EasyCDF fills in the pertinent contact information as well as the borrower's closing costs and transactions to result in an accurate cash to close result. But it does not contain the seller's closing costs or transactions and is limited in what it shows regarding the loan itself, allowing the document to be compressed down to 2 pages with a 3rd page for a signature addendum, just like the seller's disclosure. A closing protection letter is an agreement to indemnify the lender for actual losses incurred by specific escrow-related actions of the title agents. CPLs, again, that's closing protection letters, are subject to variations from state to state and are specific to the agent. EasyCDF includes a CPL generator, using a new title services section. The CPL function operates as a pop-up that you log into with your Fidelity login credentials, carrying over data on the lender and the property from the CD, and using the attorney and form specifics you've entered into the dedicated user interface. Drop-downs and text boxes let you quickly finalize the letter and save them as PDFs for quick printing or emailing. In our latest update, we've also added e-jackets to EasyCDF for title company use. An e-jacket is simply a computer-generated title policy. Title companies are switching to electronic approach in the interest of the economy and the environment. So EasyCDF includes e-jacket generation using a new title services section. This integration will reduce production time and errors by eliminating redundant data entry. Applicable data will be pulled from your form already entered into the CD and will be submitted directly to the title services electronically. Now, the main form for most people listening in today will be the closing disclosure and its related seller's disclosure. We'll go into that more during the demonstration itself. However, it's important to know when you may still be processing the HUD-1 instead of the CDF, because the HUD hasn't been completely discontinued, although that is probably on the horizon based on the changes we're seeing. The loan estimate and disclosures are the new primaries, often augmented with Alta statements at the request of the bank, but in cases with home equity revolving lines of credit, reverse mortgages, mobile homes, or other dwellings not attached to the land, and no interest second mortgages, you can use the HUD instead. So now that we've taken a look at what's out there, let's ask the question, what sort of changes are we expecting? Well, the final decision on most of it hasn't come down from the CFPB quite yet, but we know some of the items they're considering. They plan to clarify some loopholes on when a CD should be used instead of an alternative. They're also considering changing the way seller's credit is tracked. And finally, there are several proposed changes to closing costs and cash to close calculations. A recent presentation sponsored by Fidelity National pointed out that some closings, such as those involving cooperatives, fit into a vague space in the current laws, where it becomes unclear whether the loan estimate and closing disclosure are actually required. This is especially true in cases like cooperatives where the states have varying definitions of what is and is not considered real property. To account for this, the CFPB proposed change will define real property itself, requiring the TRID disclosures in all closed-end consumer credit transactions, regardless of state laws. Currently, the seller credit in EasyCDF is handled as a single item. On the buyer's side, it is line 5 of section L, and on the seller side, line 8 of section N. Because of this single line used to sum up all the seller credit factors, attorneys have sometimes needed to expand into available open spaces on the form to fill in the additional factors that cannot be handled so simply. Additionally, explaining the seller credit line has become more difficult because the breakdown is not included on the CD that the borrower and the seller are actually looking at. In response to these issues, the proposal was to take a single item and expand it into an itemization of some sort, the goal being to make the attorney's job easier with this more comprehensive interface. Although the final form of the new interface has not really been decided upon yet, the current suggestion is to allow either the current lump sum seller credit or break down into an itemized selection of specific fees. But the seller's credit isn't all there is. The calculations are going to change in a variety of other ways as well to both clarify and add flexibility. The loan amount is the total amount the consumer will borrow, and the closing cost to be financed is the loan amount minus the estimated total amount of payments to third parties not otherwise disclosed. There's also some discussion of excluding the sale price for simultaneous loans for subordinate financing to ensure accurate cash-to-close calculations in those cases. Additionally, there are a variety of small changes being made, ranging from rounding changes for specific lines or sections of the closing disclosure to when third-party payments are shown, and changing the rule which has required the adjustments and other credits to be negative on the form. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Many other changes are being considered that apply to the lender side of the TRID specifically. So where does that leave us? Well, thankfully, for the most part, we're all going to have a smooth course through these changes. While the proposed changes will be important, none of them are going to be the sort of foundation-shaking alterations that we saw in October of 2015. The constant changes over the last year do still necessitate that we change and grow, and EasySoft has been doing so, but we don't expect to run into the kind of stressful situation that we've had before when these new changes come along. I've mentioned earlier that we've integrated Alta forms and a custom buyer's disclosure, and in the last few months we've also begun integrating title services like the CPLs and e-jackets with the assistance of Fidelity National Financial. All of these are part of a growing level of comprehensive automation. Replacing the HUD, EasyCDF is the new primary real estate program. And EasySoft has been designing it with 100% TRID compliance as our top priority. It has built-in safeguards to help ensure data accuracy as well. The real estate closing process, automated with EasyCDF, improves your productivity, reducing your closing time by as much as 80%, and the new real estate suite, which comes with Easy HUD as well, handles those special situations that still call for the older form. So before I jump into a demonstration of the software, let's lay out the steps that we're going to go through. For many EasySoft users, the closing disclosure itself will be their first stop, so we default the program to open to that page. But some of our users will still want to start with the loan estimate, which is the first of the three key forms in the new closing rules. The loan estimate module allows easy generation of the loan estimate from manually entered data, from an import with our internal MISMO tool, or with a BSPAC integration. Now we come to the closing disclosure itself, which is broken down into 5 tabs at the top, which match the CD's 5 pages. Most firms start their closing at this stage, generating a RESPA-compliant HUD or TILA-compliant CDF, with the options to print the full closing disclosure, just a seller's disclosure, or print both. As I mentioned, there's a custom buyer's disclosure, similar to the seller's disclosure, that can be used. So Alta statements. Generating one of the 4 Alta forms quickly with our automated products in the advanced printing module, or you can generate one from real estate docs, which is blank, and you fill in manually, has been made a lot easier. And we do keep those forms up to date and in line with changes to the CD where necessary. So moving on to case data. In the case data section of our program is where you store the comprehensive catalog of information on the case that can be used to look up information later on buyers, sellers, lenders, and etc. You can automatically enter the information from there into the real estate forms or the real estate documents. The real estate documents section is a host of docs that can be generated and filled out quickly and efficiently. You can also include your own forms to our nationwide library. Now, once your closing is being finalized and the documents have been sent out, the next step is to balance the ledger and send out checks. EasySoft ledger functions are the same in EasyCDF and EasyHUD, and the ledger function is designed to make sure that everything comes out correctly and well balanced. We'll go over that a little bit later. So the last step is the 1099 filing, where you can electronically file with the IRS at the end of the year. In fact, today, for our current customers, is the last day for 1099 submission. So, put simply, what do you need to complete a TRID compliant closing? Well, first of all, you need to be sure that your software is able to handle the new loan estimates and the closing disclosure, but also that it can support the older HUD statements and Alta when it's requested. Don't forget that MISMO compliance, CPLs, and several other factors may come up as we get deeper into the era of TRID. So be sure that your software solution is staying current with the latest needs of the industry. In the modern day, your software solution has to evolve in response to the changing industries. So where can I find information on the closing disclosure and changes that are coming down the pipe? Here are a list of our websites that are websites that we found are very useful. www.consumerfinance.gov is the CFPB's official site. www.alta.org is American Land Title Association's official website. Now these are just a few free resources that we can think of that can be a big help in making adjusting to these changes less painful, especially as more changes are coming. We also post these links and others on our website, www.easysoft-usa.com. All right. So one last thing before I enter the presentation itself, I wanted to thank you for attending the webinar. I hope that the information I provided so far has been informative and that the demonstration will be able to fill in the blanks. Like I said, if you have any questions while I'm going along, type them into the questions box. I'll try to get to them at the end of the presentation, but if we run out of time and are unable to get to them, our product consultants will be in contact with you shortly to answer those questions by phone. You can also contact us if you have questions or wish to place an order at 800-905-7638 or visit www.easysoft-usa.com. So bear with me for just a second and we will get into the presentation of the software. All right, thanks for bearing with me there. I'm loading in a closing disclosure right now that we can take a look at. For this presentation, I'm not going to check in with my BeastPath updates, so I'm just going to say no. Now, I mentioned before that you start out with a loan estimate. That would be our first tab. Now, you can begin here, but for many of our users, the loan estimate is being handled by the lender, and all you need to do is start at the closing disclosure. So that's where I'm going to go from here. We're going to go through the 5 pages of the closing disclosure very quickly. We'll talk about the ledger, 1099s, and real estate docs, and then we'll do a couple questions before we run out of time. All right, so the closing disclosure, like I said, is broken down into 5 pages. The first page is almost exclusively loan terms and contact information. At the top of the page, we've got 3 columns: closing information, contacts, borrower, seller, and lender, and loan information. Now, you might notice this box at the top. Depending on the color settings on your screen, this could appear as anywhere from gray to pink to blue. This box is where we put our summary for each closing, so that when you load in your copy of the program, you can quickly make sure that it's showing the right closing. Right. The form itself starts here with who created it and the status of the form. Status drop-down is for marking things as draft or preliminary, putting that little watermark on there. We're going to go ahead and leave it as final. Now, on this closing, I haven't set a closing date yet. I probably would want to do that. So we'll go ahead and set today's date as the closing date. And all of the information that I enter here will carry on to my case data and to my printout. I've already got my contacts. If I needed to add another one, I click on the little person button and I can add a new contact, or I can select them from a Rolodex of contacts that I have on hand. I'm not going to do that because I've already set up and ready to move on. In the loan terms, we put our loan amount and interest rate, and up here we put our sale price so that we can start calculating principal and interest. Sometimes you might have an amount that can change after closing. If it can, click yes, and you can add the requisite bullet points. You can also add bold text by right-clicking and choosing bold. Again, this is all pretty standard to closing disclosure rules set under TRID. And the last two important sections on here, projected payments is where you enter your payments. So you can see I've got two payments here right now. Let's say I want to make this one a range so the principal and interest can vary. I click on range of payment, and I have a minimum and maximum that I can set. Another thing I can do, I can add or delete columns. I'm going to go ahead and add one here. If I want, I can make that a final balloon payment, or I can delete the column if I want to remove it from my list. That's just how you set up your projected payments. At the bottom of the page, probably the most important thing for most people, cash to close. Cash to close calculations here are actually just a summary of the ones you're seeing on page 3 at the top of the page. And we'll get to that in a second. First, we're going to touch on page 2, but there's not really much to say here. Page 2 is very straightforward. It's just a breakdown of all of the charges. So we've got origination charges, things borrower did and did not shop for, etc. Section E, you'll have your tax table where you can add transfer taxes. I'm going to go ahead and set this in New Jersey. Well, actually, yeah, go. You see the tax table comes up. I say OK. And it populates in my recording fees and transfer taxes. In other sections, like let's say down here in H, which is sort of our miscellaneous section, we'll have more standard drop-downs where we can select common entries. Now you'll notice that these say things like legal fees, HOA capital. I'm going to go ahead and do the drop-down for G, or G doesn't have it, I'm sorry. Let's go do the drop-down for C. You'll notice that these drop-downs are different. Each section has some common items that are suggested by the CFPB. We've carried those common items into the drop-downs to make it a little bit easier. You can just select title, closing, protection, letter, fee instead of having to type it out. One other factor that we have on H is a real estate commissions tool where you can calculate commissions very quickly based on the sale price. All right, that information gets totaled at the bottom, where you also enter your lender credit, and that carries over to page 3. So I mentioned earlier that page 1, cash to close, is calculated on page 3. That calculation is done here, so you can see the full calculation right now. There's the loan estimate version and the final version, so you can see the breakdown and how they match up and don't match up. All right. You'll notice I've got some fields here that are in white, some fields that are in kind of a pale blue, and some fields that are in dark blue. The fields in dark blue pre-populate from elsewhere in the document, but are editable because sometimes those values change in a way that the form can't normally account for through calculations. The fields in light blue are locked in values. They're literally just carrying over exactly a number from a different part in the form. For instance, the seller credit is lower on this page. And fields in white, just text fields. You type in there. They affect calculations, but are not directly affected by calculations. So in this case, the loan estimate, all of that information carried over from the loan estimate form. And if we don't have one, we type those in manually. There's no calculations going on there. But the cash to close at the bottom is calculated, so that's locked. I can't even type there. The rest of the page is a slightly new version, but very much looks like page 1 of the old HUD form. So if you're familiar with HUD, this is pretty familiar. It's just a quick summary of transactions, and then at the bottom, we calculate cash to or from the borrower and to or from the seller at closing. I like to think of this as kind of a mathematical proof like you used to have in high school, where you're making sure that this number and this number match up. If they don't, there was some calculation that got missed. Some value that wasn't entered, or some minus sign is where it shouldn't be, something of that nature. All right. The rest of the closing disclosure is mostly just reading and checking boxes. Pretty quick and straightforward. It's all loan information on pages 4 and 5, including loan calculations, which we recently added some automated processes to help save you a little bit of time. This is also where the CFPB is suggesting some minor changes to the number of decimal spots on the percentages here. And this is on, again, page 5, where at the bottom of the page, you'll see there's contact information. You can add your brokers, settlement agent, lender here. That information, the settlement agent actually is going to come from when you set up the CDF program. And the lender should come from page 1. But you'll want to add your brokers yourself by clicking on the little person button, just like you would on page 1. You can type the information in or add them from known contacts. Those contacts are added under Tools, Case Management. It's sort of a Rolodex. Also under Tools is a tax proration tool, which does the calculations and plugs into page 3. If you're using the HUD, plugs into page 1. And default settings where you can set up some defaults for the program. Those are the key things here. So all that kind of aside, we're moved pretty quickly through it, but that's how you fill out the closing disclosure. You fill in page 1 with loan information, page 2 with itemization, page 3 with tax prorations, credits, things like that, and 4 and 5 going back to loan information. Really, it seems very daunting at first, but becomes pretty comfortable over time. And hopefully will be a little easier for borrowers to understand. Some people, though, like to present Alta statements. To do that, you would go to Modules, Advanced Printing, and you can print an Alta statement from here. So I'm going to do an Alta Combine just as a quick demonstration. And you can see all of those fees that I've entered on pages 2 and 3 populate in here so that I can see how everything looks. So that's closing disclosure, loan estimate, and Alta. They're very straightforward. Our help desk is available if you have any questions. We're more than happy to answer any questions about that. And then when the closing disclosure is done, you're ready to move on. You might want to move on and issue some real estate docs or print checks from a ledger. In EasyCDF, the ledger function looks like this. I'm going to go ahead and re-import so we can get all of our latest fees in there. Okay, so when I re-import, it brings in all the latest things that have been added since the last time I looked at the ledger. And you can see all my different fees here, all with the reference number to print. That means it's time to print some checks. So I can just check off a few of these and choose print check. Oh, I need to put in my payee and payer names. That's kind of the side effect of doing demonstration forms, is I don't always have all the information in there. Well, adding information is pretty straightforward. You just type the information here on an add edit. And I can get there by either double-clicking on the line in the ledger or clicking Edit here at the top. I can also add transactions. If I select multiple transactions, I can combine them, or if I have a single transaction, I have the option to split it. It's very straightforward stuff. When I get around to actually printing, let me go ahead and uncheck that. When I go to print, it'll give me the choice of printing either in a check format or a check stub format. The system uses default check layouts that are built into Windows, comes with your computer. So you just put in your check number, choose which kind of paper you've got, and off it goes. It prints right away for you. No rearranging lines or anything like that. I'm going to skip over the 1099s for just a second, and we're going to talk about real estate docs. Now, I mentioned earlier that the real estate doc system populates from case data. The case data is just a breakdown of all of the contacts and basic information during the closing. So you got property address, seller's name, buyer's name, etc. All the different information. I can add my realtors, whatever I might need, so that when I go to real estate docs and open up a form, let me go ahead and take a look at this one, for instance. When I look at one of my forms, you'll notice there are fields being filled in. Those fields being filled in are carrying over straight from the case data section above. Anything that looks like a little gray bar but doesn't have anything there is some information I haven't filled in case data yet. The only things that don't fill in that would need to be filled in manually are the fields in yellow here. So in this case, this is information that's unique to that particular printing of that particular form, and that's why it's in yellow, because there's no way for the program to know what the answer would be. But it's all pretty straightforward. You can also, like I said, add your own templates, add this kind of automation to them, all sorts of things. We have documents online that show you how to do that, and our help desk would be more than happy to provide you those instructions or walk you through anything that doesn't make any sense. So that's really quickly touching on the real estate docs. So the last thing I want to touch on is 1099s. This is especially important today for our existing customers because it's the last day to submit your 1099s. The information goes off to the IRS at the end of business today, and then start of February, we can no longer accept submissions for 2016. We'll start doing 2017. So filling this in is pretty quick and easy. You put in your information in the transaction information at the top. Most of that will carry over, like the property address. And at the bottom for your sellers. Now, since I only have one seller, it only gave me one tab. I can add more if I need to. I just have to make sure I adjust the seller's gross allocation so that each seller gets the right amount rather than one of them getting 100% of the amount, one of them getting 50%. That's 50% more money than was ever actually issued, so it's got to come from somewhere. System will not let you submit this information to the IRS until it's confirmed that the seller's gross allocation does line up, so it protects you in that way. So put in my information, and then I can also print a 1099 substitute form if I want, but if you use our automatic submission, the 1099s are also sent to the seller as part of that process. If I need to see all my submissions over a period of time, I can use my submission report. And then, like I said, there is an automatic online submission tool powered by a company called InfoTrack, INFOTRACK. And that's about it for EasyCDF. Like I said, it feels like a little bit to get into at first, but you get used to it pretty quickly. It is a rich program, so if you have any questions, ask our help desk, and they'll be more than happy to walk you through anything that you're not sure about. So what I'm going to go ahead and do right now is quickly take a look at some of the questions and see if we can answer a few of those before we run out of time. We've got about 5 or 6 minutes left, so we could probably do 5 or 6 questions. All right. So when are the TRID changes going to happen? We don't know exactly when. However, we are watching very closely. The CFPB should make more announcements, put out more updates, and as we find out, we will also be letting you know. We include that information in email campaigns, in white papers, and on our website and blog. Is the program compatible with Mac OS? And then the next question down, is EasyCDF only available on the desktop? Those are kind of hand-in-hand questions, so let me answer both of those at the same time. On a Mac, you can't use Windows programs, so we use a cloud system for that. That cloud system is available to anybody. For Mac users, you would access that through a tool called the Microsoft Remote Desktop. Basically, it's a way of accessing cloud systems that mimics the way Microsoft does it. And for Windows users, you just log in through a website. But it is possible to do EasyCDF on a Mac using that tool. We're also looking into some other alternatives that might come up down the road. I would just keep an eye out for updates on that. But the cloud system is probably what you're looking for the Mac OS, or if you do not want EasyCDF on a desktop. I know some people prefer to be cloud-based. Can I go back over the Alta statement? You got in late. Sorry about that. So, Alta Basics. Just very quickly, the Alta statement is not an official form. I'll show you where to get that from the program. Modules, advanced printing, and then there's 4 Alta statements: buyer, seller, combined, and cash for different situations. Like I said, it's not an official form under the CFPB's rules. It's not a TRID form, but it's a form that a lot of people like to use. It comes from the American Land Title Association. Alta forms are basically itemized the same way that page 2 of the CD does, but it also takes information from page 3, gives you final totals, all kind of in one place on one long list. Some people find that a lot easier for explaining, especially to borrowers who are unfamiliar with the process, exactly how things work. And it's very popular with title companies in particular because it allows more space to add title fees than the CD naturally allows for. Let's see. When is EasySoft's next update? We actually just put out an update to EasyCDF. You're actually seeing it here. You can tell because under Title Services, I have eJackets, which is one of the new features. We release these about once a quarter or so, not always for the same programs, but we do pretty regular updates. If you haven't gotten an update and you have an EasySoft product, you should get a prompt for it in the next day or two when you open up the program. If you don't, contact our help desk. They'll be more than happy to help you get that taken care of. And the way to contact help desk from the program, go to Help Activate and live chat. And you can chat with a technician. They usually answer within about 20 to 40 seconds. Questions themselves, I think when I last checked, it's about 15 minutes on average to get all the questions answered for people. Let's see. What was that website? I missed it. Not sure which website that is. Our website is www.easysoft-usa.com, and the CFPB's website, www.consumerfinance.gov, and Alta's is www.alta.org. All right. Like I said, all that information is on our website, easysoft-usa.com. Go on there. You can find all the links there, plus more. Let's see. I think we are just about out of time. Let me see if I can find another one I haven't answered yet. Can I review again what's changing? Okay. Unfortunately, like I said, we're just about out of time. But we did record this, including the Q&A session just now. So we'll try and get that posted to our site pretty quickly, maybe give it a week or two at the most. But we also have a previous webinar where we talked a little bit about these changes as well. you can find that already available on our site. All right, and we are now out of time. I know I didn't get to everybody's question. I do apologize. Somebody said they have asked about 1099s. I want to answer that really quickly. 1099s are due to the seller as quickly as possible. From our system, we stop accepting submissions at the end of January. So end of today, that's it. We don't accept submissions for 2016 anymore for our online submission. That's because we mail to the seller a copy of the 1099. We have to start doing that. So we're cutting off submissions now. If you still have them, you need to get those in before the end of business today. All right. And again, I'm sorry, I'm out of time. We do have some client success people who will be able to reach out to you and answer some questions on that. Any question that you guys had has been recorded on my side. I'll print out a list and give it to people, make sure that people are able to contact you and answer any questions I wasn't able to during this presentation. Thanks again for attending. I hope for most of you it was a good lunch, and have a great day.